to the Star Wars Canon Cantina, the show where we try to answer the question, who is Luke Skywalker, before Episode 9 comes out late next year. How you doing, everybody? My name is Mike. I am broadcasting from Salt Lake City base here on planet Utah. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host and Star Wars best friend, Jesse. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing great, Mike, and I'm broadcasting from that Tulsa space station again on planet Oklahoma. And I'm excited today to talk about some Star Wars. A little different day we're having today, Mike.
Yeah, we're recording on a Sunday instead of a Thursday like we normally do, but that's fine. FanX kind of prevented me from recording last Thursday. And we'll talk about FanX a little bit later, actually. But today, our story focus is on Vader Down, a comics event that happened in 2015 that took a couple issues of the main Star Wars line and a few issues of the Vader series, and it was a nice crossover event. The main Star Wars line was written by Jason Aaron and Mike Deodato, and the Vader issues were written by Kieran Gillen and illustrated by Salvador LaRocca. And this is not... I wondered if we would cover it on this show, because it's an important story for Luke, but it is not about him, right?
Right. It's about Vader. And you're right. This is this Marvel Star Wars comics crossover event. We haven't really talked. We've mentioned Vader as in the comic series, Mike. We're not going to cover it on our show, but fantastic comic series that focuses on Vader, and it's probably, alongside the Star Wars one, the most successful out of the Marvel line, followed by the Star Wars one, which we're doing on the show.
Which, speaking of, huge thanks to everybody for tuning in to our comics episodes. I wasn't sure how well received they'd be, but they're some of our more popular episodes. So thanks for tuning into these, and I guess we've got a reason to keep catching up on the Star Wars main series now.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying rereading these, Mike, and giving the audience here a detailed breakdown on the story, because if you guys don't want to read it at home, you can definitely start our show and get the main story beats of these, which are going to fill these gaps, because once again, this is canonical. This is real. Luke and Vader have met now.
But you should
prior to Empire.
And you should either go to a comic shop or Comixology Unlimited, the Marvel digital app. There's plenty of ways to read these back issues for cheap.
Yep. And even Amazon has the graphic novels on for very cheap prices. It's actually where I got all mine, Mike, was on Amazon, because I like physical copies on my shelf. And they're doing cool things with these Marvel comics where they have different colors for every different series. So if you're a book snob or a library person, you can put them on your shelf, and they have these color coding order of the different series, which is great. And the Vader Down series is part of the Vader series, which is red.
And he doesn't say that in a condescending way. He says that because that's exactly what he does.
Yeah. It's right behind me, all these books. And yep, it's a little self-deprecation, but yeah, I like my books, and that's not going to go away. And I really like graphic novels with the things I really care about. If it's a series I don't care as much about, I'm going to read it digitally. So this is a really interesting story, Mike. It's a super group of these four. We talked about these two writers and these two illustrators worked on this. So it's kind of a brainchild comic. And I guess they approached this series with the idea of, if Vader had no one to help him out and he was surrounded by enemies.
Well, and this is clearly something that they were leading up to when they launched these new comics under the new Marvel banner, because this story starts with issue This story starts with issue 13 of both the Vader series and the main Star Wars series. So their goal was to build up for a year and then have this, big event. Yeah.
Right. And we're following right in the story where, if you guys have kept along with us at home with the Marvel stuff, we're right there. This is exactly where Luke's story goes next from the regular Star Wars series. And so we're hopefully building this up for you guys too. But let's look at our questions we ask about Luke in particular.
That's right. So since Jesse said it earlier, so this is canon. This is supposed to fit with the Luke Skywalker that we see on screen. So our questions are: what state is Luke in at the beginning of the story? How do the events and characters of the story impact his development throughout the overall Star Wars story? And does this fit with the Luke we meet in Episode 8, The Last Jedi?
And I think we're going to know some of these answers pretty quick, Mike, because Luke has some important scenes in this, but it's mainly Vader. So we can look at the Luke scenes pretty heavily with these.
All right, let's jump into it.
Ever since Luke disappeared, people have been looking for him.
I'm Luke Skywalker. I'm here to rescue you.
A lot of rumors, stories.
And I became a legend.
People that knew him best.
Luke.
Young Skywalker. Luke.
It's all true.
I am a Jedi. Like my father before me.
All of it.
So we jump into the beginning of the story, and we've got Luke in an X-Wing on patrol with Blue Squadron, right?
Yeah, definitely. And they are on patrol by the planet Vorgas Voss, or Vrogas Voss. I don't know how you want to pronounce it, but a new planet.
Planet we hadn't seen before. So we've got like a whole squadron of X-Wings, which is pretty cool. Just sort of
Blue Squadron's great.
Training maneuvers, and at this point, Luke's had a few adventures since taking down the first Death Star. He's been taken down a peg by Vader and Boba Fett.
Gracchus the Hutt,
Gracchus
too.
the Buff Hutt. That's right.
Mm-hmm. So we've seen Luke level up a little bit in the Force, which is great. And this starts off with Luke in his red X-Wing. So we have the Blue Squadron X-Wings and the Red Squadron X-Wings on this patrol.
Yeah, so looking at this page, there's probably about 24, like 2 squadrons of X-Wings here. The book doesn't actually start with them, though. The book starts in the cockpit of Darth Vader's TIE Advanced. He's supposedly found a location of a rebel base, or is it Luke Skywalker?
It's he's been given leads to lead him to that Luke Skywalker is traveling to this planet because it's known to have a old
That's
Jedi
right.
temple.
So he thinks he's just on the trail of Luke Skywalker with information provided to him by Dr. Aphra, who is a cool character that's been introduced in the comics line, and she's got her own series now and has bounced over into Darth Vader and the main Star Wars comics line as well. Context about her: she's sort of she's like described as an archaeologist type doctor, not like a medical doctor, but who is sort of scummy, part of the underworld, and she has a couple murder bots that work with her. A C-3PO knockoff, it's just 3PO but black, named 000, and an astromech droid that's armed with rocket launchers inside, named BT-41, I think.
And she calls him BT.
Yeah, so they have been working for Vader,
and they're
while he's on his side quest to track down Luke Skywalker that the Emperor doesn't know about. So Aphra provided Vader this information.
Yeah, and what's cool about BT and 000 is they are the kind of evil R2 and 3PO, which is just fun, but they're heavily modified. They're actually they were military projects working on them. So she found them through circumstance and intention, but they're not just regular droids by any means. I mentioned that because they're pretty heavy in this story as well. And imagine if 3PO was modified to assassinate people, and imagine if R2 was a utility astromech, not only for all the astromech needs, but for war as well. And imagine like how we see R2 pull out the right tool for the right job, but imagine
that tool
weapons,
being several
That's
different
BT.
kinds of rocket launchers.
Yeah, that's BT, which is great. So they're pretty cool. They are the mirror universe R2 and 3PO. Which is fun.
Their original character models were just R2 and 3PO wearing goatees, but they figured that wasn't quite different enough, so they had to change up the color scheme on them. So at the beginning of this story, Luke's out in his X-Wing on patrol, and oh crap, here's Darth Vader alone against 2 squadrons of X-Wings. What do you think's going to happen?
Yeah.
I think 2 squadrons of X-Wings are about to die.
Yeah.
And we sort of see that play out, and it's a pretty cool opening battle scene.
It really is. Vader's going head on into them, and they launch torpedoes at him. And we see Vader use the Force inside his TIE fighter to make the torpedoes veer off, which is something we haven't really seen a ton of in the canon.
I think the only other time we've seen it is when Luke made the torpedoes veer into the Death Star exhaust port.
Right.
He didn't know what he was doing.
Yeah, Luke closing his eyes and like we say, reaching out, feeling through the force. This is actively, you see Vader in his tie, raise his hand up, and he like stops the torpedoes. And they say, that's impossible, you know? And he's still coming. And yeah, Luke at this point says it's Vader. And then they say, Red 5, Vader, are you sure you have visual confirmation? He says, I don't need to. It's him. So we have Luke realizing
so
this.
Luke he's seen the ship before on the Death Star, and he's had his run-ins with Vader earlier in the comic series, and he's been humbled by Vader. So he knows just how powerful Vader is and how much of a threat to the galaxy and to the Rebel Alliance he is. So instead of running away when the rest of the X-Wing squad is pretty much destroyed, Luke decides to go head on with Vader and just crash into him and try to kill both of them. I think that says a lot about how maybe desperate Luke has become since we saw him in A New Hope. How he's willing to sacrifice a lot more than he might have originally been to help the Rebel Alliance.
Yeah, they even say, Luke, veer off at that speed, you're going to fly right into him. And Luke says, R2, close all comms. And Vader says, finally a pilot worth killing. And we sort of have this anime moment where we have
what?
Luke's X-Wing, a TIE fighter, Vader's face, back to Luke's face. And then we see them crash, like Mike just mentioned. And Luke here says, die, you blank, ...
Die, you and your many prosthetic parts.
Yeah. I realized, Mike, I listened to our new episode, and I realized that I'm throughout the episode saying many prosthetic limbs. Like I'm trying to make it sound better.
I never corrected you. I noticed each time.
I went back and forth a lot between the parts. The parts is just, that's terrible. Vader's lower half is missing. So they fall, as in Luke's X-Wing and Vader's X-Wing fall into
they
the
don't
atmosphere.
die, obviously. They crash on the planet's surface. Different parts. They don't like land next to each other.
Yeah, and Vader has a great line here, actually. He says, if he truly is strong on the Force, this will not end him.
Which, of course, we know it doesn't. And then what? The next 60-something pages of this is Vader slaughtering rebels, right?
Basically. Well, the next scene we go to is we see Leia and Han talking about how Vader's crashed on this planet, and
they
Leia's
send
saying,
the rebels.
Get all the troops. Yeah, get all the troops to that planet right now. And as we see, Luke wasn't here by happenstance. Like they show that there's a secret rebel refueling base on the side of this planet. So it's like a little refueling station, not a major base, but clearly the rebels have some sort of preference.
But it's not
here.
where they expected Darth Vader himself to show up. That's for sure.
No, so we have the fleet show up here, as we've mentioned in other episodes. We're going to see a lot in this time frame between New Hope and Empire. This very small rebel fleet with the Nebulon Bees and the transports and stuff, and they come to the planet as well. And now we see some B-wings too, Mike, which I wrote down was interesting to me. But that was really cool. And Han's trying to talk Leia out of doing this, which is a theme we see in the EU and Legends. We've talked about this a lot before. He's like, man, don't go down there. It's Vader. And Leia's like, everything, all the priorities point to killing Vader. Nothing
she
else.
wants to focus on killing Vader, not rescuing Luke. And Han goes off to rescue Luke.
Right.
But we do get like 60 pages of Vader establishing himself as the most dangerous man in the galaxy. What are some of the ways that he just obliterates rebels? He uses his TIE fighter guns to create like a distraction. Like he repurposes the guns.
Really cool. Well, there's a scene here. It's a double page piece of art that everybody always references from this comic that hasn't even read it. It's this 2-panel thing with Vader surrounded by all these commandos. And these are very clearly the Rebel commandos. These are not the fleet troopers. These are not just the generic guards. These are the guys we see on Endor and stuff like that. And there looks
to be maybe about 100 of them.
Yeah, and they all surround him. And they say, lay down your weapons. Darth Vader, you're surrounded. And you see some guy sweating as one guy saying that. And Vader says, "All I am surrounded by is fear and dead men."
All I am surrounded
And
by
then
is
the next-
fear and dead men.
And they tell, and that's actually where one of the issues ends. And Vader actually says, "Lower your weapons and you will not be harmed." And they don't do that.
That's kind
And
of
you see Vader flick his
kind of
finger.
like that line in the Star Trek reboot where Kirk's in the bar fight and the guy's like, "There's 5 of us and 1 of you," and he's like, "So get some more guys and it'll be a fair fight." That's Vader's way of saying that here. Yeah, so
Right.
Vader gets inventive with how he slaughters these rebels, and it's cool action.
Yeah, we see a little similar shot to Kylo's hand in The Last Jedi, where you see him flicking his hand sideways, and all the rebel troopers' pins are pulled out of all their grenades.
Oh no! And then they explode. He's able to detect like snipers shooting at him.
Oh yeah, mortar tanks too,
and deflect that stuff with
and
his
he's deflecting.
lightsaber. Oh yeah, here's what I was talking about earlier. He's repurposed the guns on his TIE fighter to shoot down approaching snow air speeders. That's not snow speeders because there's not snow on this planet, I guess.
Right. I know it's always natural to call them the snow speeder. Yeah, just the plain air speeders. And yeah, they start doing bombing runs on Vader with Y-Wings, and gosh, man, just all this stuff, it's not working. And he throws giant debris up into the Y-Wings.
So
so they can make their
literally,
bombing run.
would you say thousands? At least 8,000? Hundreds? Call it hundreds. Hundreds of people. Hundreds of people die. Lots of expensive equipment is lost, and Leia's just sending more. Just we have to kill him. She's obviously still furious about Alderaan and everything. In addition to some of their other recent scrapes with Vader. But Luke's not in this action. He crash landed somewhere different from Vader. So while Vader is basically extending his last scene at the end of Rogue One from a minute and a half to 60 pages, Luke is doing something different.
Yeah, this is probably the meat of our episode today. We have Luke and R2 stumble upon this ruined place. And Luke says, we got some red text here. It's a strange place, R2. Looks like some kind of temple. And then him and R2 walk up to this wall, and they see some sort of text on the wall. And Luke says, wait, this writing, I think this was written by a lightsaber. This was a Jedi temple. I can feel it. Like, it's cold here. It just feels cold to me. And you see some statues, and then Luke says, Ben? Someone with Ben? And in the distance, you see these glowing figures.
Yeah, I want to talk about this real quick. It's Luke looking past some debris, and it's just a blurry light, 2 lights, a lighter one and a darker one, and it looks real similar to what Rey sees in the Force Cave in Episode 8, as those shadowy figures are approaching before they merge, and she sees herself. It looks real similar to that.
Yeah, definitely. And Luke says, someone with Ben? Anakin, my father. And Luke's just assuming this is Anakin, my father.
And the reader at this point is going, it's not your dad. We know.
He's on the other side of the planet killing 1,000 people. And then you see R2 beeping, and Luke says, no, R2, if I can't concentrate it, I can feel it. And he says, what? And then we see the figures have disappeared. And the figure has disappeared, which is now we see 3PO, or what we think is 3PO. Luke says, it's good to see you, 3PO. And R2's freaking out. Luke says, calm down, R2. It's just, and then we see 3PO touch Luke and electrocute Luke.
So this is actually 000, Dr. Aphra's murder bot, who, I'm going to be honest, I like the concept of, but they lean a little too hard into the evil 3PO vibe in some of this dialogue and everything. Gets a little too
that he's still a protocol droid,
right? But it's still it's a little too corny, a little too over the top, I think. But yeah, he's been painted gold to look like 3PO. That's how he gets the drop on Luke. But back to the temple. So we've got this temple on Vrogus Voss. We've got the Jedi temple on Lothal. We've got we saw a couple in Clone Wars, right?
Yeah, you're right. This is a new thing they're establishing in the canon, where there are these Let's not forget Jeddah, of course.
The original temple on
spoiler
Coruscant.
alert. Apparently, Jedi comes up again in the future
in stuff
these
that's
Marvel
just recently
comics.
come out. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about that. And we'll get to that on the show with you guys, of course, as well. And Luke's experiences on Jeddah in the future, I'm assuming. But yeah, this is a thing they're doing, Mike, in the new canon that seems like there was not just the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. There were several Jedi temples, and a lot of them were dramatically older than the Jedi we see during the Republic, right? Like they were thousands of years prior, things like that.
That's like the one we saw in Star Wars Rebels, the one on Lothal. I think we might have seen two. Was it? No, it was just the one temple on Lothal. Yeah, that's right. The thing with the dumb wolf paintings that ran in a circle, that was something different, wasn't the... that was a different Jedi artifact. Anyway,
Jedi-ish thing.
I've got the urge to get out my galaxy map and start marking where all of these Jedi temples are.
Yeah, there's more than we thought, right?
Yeah.
That's what they're telling us now.
There's more than we thought, and I think that supports what we see of modern Luke and what we hear about him in Force Awakens, and then what we see in The Last Jedi. He had spent so much time searching all the Jedi temples, learning as much as he could about the Jedi, and if he's going to be exploring these places, he has to have temples to find that ultimately lead him to the first one, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely.
So his
Luke's
journey,
passed out of this
his temple
temple.
journey starts on Vrogas Voss and ends on Octu in Episode 8.
Definitely. And as we know in these Marvel comics before, Luke was trying to get to the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, right?
He got detoured in his attempt to get there.
Nar Shaddaa. Yeah. So now we followed a couple scenes with BT, and now Dr. Aphra shows up, and she's saying, "Good job, 000," and her and BT show up, and we have some funny little scenes here with R2 trying to defend Luke's body against BT and 000. And I wrote down a 000 line here. Why? What in my language? This is a foul-mouthed astromech. I wonder if he's capable of backing up such talk. And us at home, we know R2 probably is. And R2 pulls out his little electroshocker, but then of course BT pulls out his miniguns and rocket launchers.
It's a funny page turn because R2's got his shocker. We know that works on Ewoks and sometimes battle droids. But then BT flips, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different weapon systems. Looks like 2 types of rocket launchers and 4 types of projectile weapons.
Miniguns.
Yeah, not even lasers.
Yeah, and then we got some miniguns and a couple just regular blasters. Yeah, and then you see R2 turn tail and run.
He makes an R2 sound that we have not heard before. And I thought it was funny. So one time I go, blorp. And then you can hear him screaming as he's, running away from all these explosions as BT's shooting at him.
He's like, I don't want to die to rockets.
And for some reason, he's not flying away because adding his rocket jets in the prequels was a gigantic mistake.
They don't work anymore, Mike. It's okay.
He's not asked anybody to fix it. Whatever. Gigantic mistake in the prequels.
Yeah. So then we have scenes of, here's a really cool scene, Mike, because I'm going to mention this. This is a little nerdiness for me. This is a little George Lucas nerd stuff and film stuff. But so as all this is happening, 000 and Aphra start carrying Luke's body, which is still unconscious, to their ship. But then Han gets the jump on them, and Han literally has the high ground. He's up on a cliff with a sniper rifle, exactly like Indiana Jones in the first Indiana Jones at the end. And it's kind of interesting. And he's kind of taunting them like, oh, I caught you guys. And then we have an interaction, which is fun, with Aphra and Han, because they're both kind of rogue characters, right? And there's a lot of that going on. Talking about who's going to show up where. And then we see Chewie show up and flank them, basically. And Chewie rips 000's arms off, right? One of them.
I think both,
right?
yeah.
So And then Afra and Han start having a shootout. Han's up on the cliff with the sniper rifle, and Afra's on the ground with her pistols, and they start a fight.
Yes, so it's it's a bit of a slapstick cartoon in how Han and Chewie rescue Luke from Afra and the droids. But
Yeah, Luke wakes up and uses his lightsaber on the droids,
Yeah.
which is cool.
and of course they're not done; they come back. But but at this point, Luke becomes a secondary character in the story.
Right. Yeah, it switches gears with Leia and Vader.
Well,
soon.
pretty much Leia kind of replaces Luke as the other focus besides Vader because she's gone to encounter Vader herself. Basically, she's so hell bent on stopping him here while he doesn't have Imperial reinforcements that it's pretty cool. It's showing that it's if we're gonna apply our questions to Leia, it's keeping consistent with her character from A New Hope. Who's ready to do what it takes. Get in the garbage chute, fly boys. And she's not a princess who needs rescuing, but she's a leader taking any action necessary. Yeah, let's see. There's a neat scene. She tries to ambush him and gets face to face with him again. So this is the first time she's been this close to him since the Death Star, deck where she had to see Alderaan explode.
Right, because the only other interaction we had more recently was her and Han and that AT-AT fighting Vader.
And that was way back at the beginning of this.
A couple months back. Yeah. So Vader says, "You dare think you can ambush a Lord of the Sith," which is cool. Cool line. And
So Leia is face to face with Vader and decides, you know what? I should go rescue Luke. Vader gets distracted by something, which we'll talk about briefly in a second. But she takes her opportunity to leave, and she finds the real 3PO, not
the real
BT.
3PO.
And they eventually all meet up back at the Falcon, right?
Yeah, and Han gets Luke, who's still a little bit shaky, and Chewie, who's a little bit shaky from his injuries from fighting the droids, to the Falcon. And Luke says, "She's doing what? That's suicide." And Han says, "I thought you were the crazy one, kid. I guess it's a saving all my friends kind of day for me."
Which is good.
So, yeah. And Han and Luke get in the Falcon. They start flying over there, and Han says, "Hey, Prince, this is the Falcon. We won't be letting you make your heroic sacrifice today."
But before they're able to take off, though, I do want to talk about the introduction of another character, another associate of Dr. Afra.
They take off. That's
true.
The best part. This character shows up and knocks him down.
And this character literally crashes his ship into the Falcon to knock him down. If you thought all Wookiees were good guys, you were wrong. You have not yet met Black Chrysanthemum, a literally black furred armor wearing Wookiee bounty hunter who has some connection to Afra, who she's called in as reinforcements. So him and Chewie have a big fight. It's super cool. One of my favorite parts of this book, actually.
It is super cool. Yeah, definitely. It reminded me too of Chewie fighting Dengar, but now we have two Wookiees fighting, which is even better. And then we have an interaction between 3PO and 000.
Right. 000, who currently has had his arms ripped off by Chewbacca.
Yeah, and one of his arms cut off by Luke.
Oh, that's right.
That's what I was mentioning earlier.
So,
and we see 3PO run into him, and then he rips 3PO. They take 3PO's arms from him.
BT is able to take off 3PO's arms,
shoots him off,
put them on 000. So 3PO is in pieces again. That happens a little too much here in the comics.
This is most undignified, is what 3PO says. But yeah, a cool line here from Vader. We go back to Vader and Leia. Here is, "You thought your friends would save you." And Leia says, "They won't save you, but they'll end me."
That's right. So Leia's holding her ground. I had that wrong earlier. I thought she escaped when Vader was distracted. She's holding her ground as another wave of Y-wing bombers come in.
Yeah, and she's basically saying, "I've laid a target spot for the bombers. This is the spot," and she's not telling them that that's her location. So she's kind of basically tricking everybody in a way, saying like, "I'm with Vader, bomb this spot," and they don't know they're about to bomb one of their leaders. Yeah. And Luke's saying, no, 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 no to the bombers. Luke is freaking out.
And then it doesn't matter because one of the more unique characters in the Star Wars universe shows up. His name is Commander Carbon, and I'm going to describe him to you, and you're not going to believe me if you haven't read this.
Yeah, or Vader, right? Because he's makes his first appearance.
That's true.
Vader.
Yeah. So if you took, let's see, a purple lightsaber plus 3 others, and some General Grievous arms, some Darth Maul robot legs, a cape for some reason because even though it's a robot body, it needs a cape, and Admiral Akbar's head. So a fish head on top of a General Grievous-esque body. Is Commander Carbon, and he's actually shown up to fight Vader, which has implications later on in the Vader comic and is pretty neat. So that's the distraction that is able to get Leia out of that situation. Commander Carbon shows up to have a lightsaber fight with Vader.
Definitely. And Vader kind of learns he's been double-crossed in a way, and that everyone wants Luke more than just Vader with his personal convictions. Commander Carbon wants this too, right? Because he wants to get in good with the Palpatine.
Yeah, so
and he actually wants to be the new Vader.
I'm intentionally not telling too much about some of these side characters because I want you to go find these things and read them. But Carbon is one of a few other apprentice trainees that Palpatine has to potentially replace Vader if they prove superior to him, because Palpatine still isn't too happy that Vader got high grounded by Obi-Wan and then lost the Death Star and everything. So he's starting to send his contingency plans after Vader, and Carbon is the first and most unique one that we see for sure.
So yeah, him and Vader fight. 4 lightsabers, green, blue, and purples versus Vader's red, which is great. And meanwhile, the Wookiee battle is still going, and R2 joins in and helps Chewbacca. So they're fighting, and a lot is going on. A lot of conversation between Vader and Carbon, which will leave up to you guys to read. And the Wookiee battle continues throughout all this. R2 and 3PO reunite, and Luke is knocked out by a group of stormtroopers, actually, which is really interesting. Carbon's stormtroopers.
So Carbon is with the Empire, but not on Vader's team in the Empire, basically. So Carbon thinks he's going to take Luke in to the Emperor. Leia has come back she's used this fight to line up a shot on Vader, but then she decides, I have to rescue Luke.
Yeah,
and not only Luke, there's a neat panel of Leia standing over the unconscious bodies of Han, Luke, and Chewbacca. And she is literally saving everybody else of our main hero team.
Yeah, the irony is they all came back for her, but then they all got ambushed, and then she ends up saving them, which is great. Carbon actually gets a slight advantage on Vader in the lightsaber fight. You see how that play out a little bit, and Aphra shows up out of nowhere in her ship and basically lands the ship on top of Carbon.
Yeah, which is pretty neat.
To stop him. Yeah, and she's like, you owe me one, Vader. Because at this point, Vader and Aphra have been working together for quite some time on this mission. And so, yeah, she's got his back. Mainly because she knows that if she saves him, like he won't kill her, She's still afraid that he will kill her, but they have a mutual sort of thing going on right now.
As mutual as you can have an agreement with Darth Vader.
Yeah, and then it just, this is such an action-packed story. Carbon's troops are taking Luke away on a Lambda-class shuttle, and Vader says no, and you see him pull the shuttle out of the sky. Cool. Yeah, and he makes the engines explode, so it has nowhere to go. And Luke just gets out. And then we see Aphra finally capture Luke, or she thinks she has captured Luke and Han. And this is when Leia shows up the last time, and she punches Aphra out.
Which is super neat.
And then they all escape on the Falcon, just in the nick of time. And Vader sees the Falcon getting away. Like we never know. And we have a Luke line here at the end, Mike, to finish this story out. Luke says, I don't know, Han. It's just I'm never going to get back to that temple again. I was so close to something, and I'll never know what it was. And it ends. And we see Vader's silhouette looking at the Falcon as it flies away, as Luke's saying that final line.
So I know we kind of went quickly through that compared to even our other comics episodes. But like I said, Luke is not the main focus in this. And so much of this is just cool action that it's boring to sit here and listen to us talk about it. You really do need to just go read Vader Down. But hopping back to our questions, we've already talked about the state he was in at the beginning. He's willing to sacrifice his life to crash into Vader. How do the events and characters of this story impact his development? Is there anything specific that you can see in this arc that might impact Luke going forward? I know we've talked about the journey of the Jedi temples, which kind of goes with our third question, but is there anything else that's sticking out to you?
Not really. I mean, not much more than what we've covered in the Star Wars stuff, because we have another Luke Vader conflict, though more minor in this one. The Jedi Temple is pretty cool because Luke's saying, like, I felt like I was close to something and I'll never know what it was. Like, it's kind of like he's got some questions, maybe some frustrations about that. He thought he was about to see Obi-Wan, but as he thought Obi-Wan was coming up, 000 ambushed him. So he kind of got knocked out of that.
Well, and then to lead into our third question, does what we've seen fit with the Luke we met in The Last Jedi? I think it does, because this started him on that Jedi Temple quest. Like, he was so close to seeing something. So once Return of the Jedi was over, he'd start going to more Jedi temples to...
we can assume, yeah.
Well, we can assume, and we actually see a little bit in a video game of all places. That's further on down the line. So I think this does fit with Luke that we've met, which is good. I like going back to having current canon sources that fit with the Luke Skywalker we know, not the stuff that we saw in our episode last week.
Oh, yeah, because that's true. That's canonical. But yeah, that haunts me. But we will, a little less Luke today, but more Vader stuff, which is directly tied to Luke. I mean, Vader's whole mission in these stories is finding Luke. It originally goes from finding the pilot who brought down the Death Star to finding my son. When he finds out the information, Skywalker, I have a son. He will join it. He will join me. So that's kind of the whole driving force of Vader in these comics, and we're excited to see where this goes, Mike. So you guys are gonna follow us on future Marvel episodes. These arcs with Luke and Vader are going to continue, and of course, Luke's friends along for the ride as well.
So a little lighter on story overview today, but that's not anything against Vader Down. It's just a very action-packed comic. You need to go ahead and track that one down for sure.
Yeah, and the art is very consistent in this one. We didn't mention the art yet, but some of the other ones, the art flip-flops a little bit in quality.
It's pretty good. It's clear they built up
pretty
to
great
this
throughout.
Probably had some extra time to work on it.
Yeah, and I think it's cool they got the Star Wars artist and the Vader artist together. So that was probably some interesting collaboration on the style and
setting and everything.
Yeah, maybe like you draw the Vader stuff, I draw the Luke stuff.
It's pretty consistent issue by issue, but they kept everything consistent between the two, which was nice. All right, so that'll do it for Vader Down. Let's run over to the HoloNet real quick.
And now for a HoloNet news exclusive.
Okay, so some Star Wars news this week. It's actually a couple weeks old, but we thought this was as good a time as any to talk about this. So with Star Wars Resistance coming out very soon, Mike, a month away, basically.
Less now, I think. Yeah.
Less. They've released of course, the trailer, which we did on our show, which I thought was really fun to look at, despite the odd, ridiculous backlash we're seeing on this.
I'm going to go.
They've released a second video.
The thing. Yeah, go ahead and keep talking.
Yeah. They released a second video on Resistance. This one is kind of a 3-minute behind-the-scenes short with Dave Filoni, which is great, since he's one of the creators of Resistance, and a lot of the cast. So we get introduced to the cast members and a lot of the characters that are going to be on the show. A lot of the people we saw in the trailer now we know they're going to be on the show, and these are obviously the ones past Poe and Phasma and stuff, the ones we recognize, but all these new characters. But what are you looking at?
I'm
Mike?
looking
Tell me
at the
about
like and dislike numbers of that first look trailer still.
And then crazy thousands.
It was
now,
ridiculous when we first talked about it a few weeks ago. There are 12,000 likes and 109,000 dislikes on YouTube. So this has to be some sort of bot thing, right?
I hope so. That's unbelievable. That's I don't even know, Mike. I mean, it's a kids show. I don't even know why we're trying to destroy the life.
Well, and if we look at this behind the scenes video that came out that we're talking about today, it's about 6,000 likes and 8,000 dislikes. So that's a closer ratio than the other video ever had.
Yeah, so there's something going on there. And what's funny is those people that are hating on that first video, they probably never even clicked on the second video to even give it more of a chance or to look at it. So
yeah,
I don't know,
and we see
part of
some
it
cool
too,
things.
but-
We see a little bit of behind the scenes with the actors. One I'm particularly excited about. I forget the character's name, but he's the green Nikto on Team Fireball. He's voiced by Josh Brenner, who plays Big Head on Silicon Valley. Love that show.
Right.
And we see a new droid, Bucket. He's got like a BB-8 head, but wears a flight helmet, and he's mounted on like an R2 unit, like cylinder torso that's kind of lacking some outer plating. It looks really interesting.
Yeah, I heard, I don't know if this is accurate or not, but I heard that he's kind of like a incomplete astromech. Like he never got his dome casing, and he never got parts of him finished. So maybe that's why he wears the helmet for fun. And it looks cool. And yeah, we get to see a lot more of the visuals here, and I'm even more impressed by the
I am
visuals.
too. Yeah,
after watching
you
this,
see a lot more
it's
like
growing.
continuous motion shots than we did in the teaser, and it looks smooth. I think it looks pretty cool.
Yeah, and something I've got to mention, Mike, we see a lot of species representation from the original trilogy. We see an Ithorian and Nikto, obviously, some other aliens in the background that are straight up from the Cantina and other places in Star Wars. So that's cool. That's something that we complained about a little bit. So it's nice to see that as well.
My only other, it's barely a gripe at this point, but the main character Kaz looks too similar to Ezra from Star Wars Rebels. So we hear a little bit about him from the voice actor, and then Tam, the black female character, we hear from her. I think that these two roles could have been switched. So we had a female character that was actually the lead of a Star Wars show, and still have them both in there, but have Poe give the spy mission to Tam instead of Kaz. I think
I just don't like that this guy kind of even looks
he
like
really
Ezra
does
a little
look kind
bit.
of like Ezra.
Like he's the same kind of ethnicity, and he has a similar type voice and color, like artistic color.
He doesn't
style.
quite have the floaty space Aladdin hair that Ezra had in season 1 of Rebels.
Right.
But I see what you're talking about. So I'm still gonna watch the show. That's not enough to like make me mad. I just would have liked to have seen things flipped and have Tam be the star of the show.
Well, and very much like Rebels, Mike, I get a feeling that he's going to be the least favorite character.
Could be.
Like Ezra was. I think he's just going to be kind of that generic point of view, young hero's journey character, very young hero's journey character, like Ezra was, and maybe even a little annoying at times, and that's
Totally
okay.
is. Well, and
because these other characters seem much better.
The other thing that this video goes out of its way to point out is this is a show made for a younger audience.
Young audience. They say that several times. They're like, with the younger audience in mind, we did this. With the younger audience in mind, we did this. And Dave is obviously super excited to bring a show to an even younger audience than he's done before. That's a new venture for him. And they also speak about a lot of the nods to anime and stuff briefly, the artistic nods. So, and I got to mention too, this week on the Star Wars show, Sam Witwer was on there, and he was talking about his excitement for the show and his background and,
He's a
old
shill.
cartoons
He
and
was
anime and
paid
stuff
to
like
say that.
Yeah. He was like, man, it just looks so fun. and I'm excited about it. And so it's like Sam Witwer's excited about it, guys. Come on, just stop.
Yeah, and if it's not your
Like-
speed, that's fine. It sounds like there's going to be nothing wrong with just skipping this show. You're not going to, I don't think anyway, be missing out on something if the movies are your focus. Any other thoughts on Resistance?
I stand by that Twitter comment that I read a while back that I really loved with, I think the show's going to ramp up with the drama and the seriousness. I think it's going to be more kiddie early on and less kiddie later on. And I think that's a good thing too. I think that shows the show's maturing in an interesting way. And then maybe when something dramatic happens at the very end, you're more invested that way because it was so lighthearted at the beginning.
So,
But
this next thing
I'm
we're
just
going to talk
excited
about,
about
it's
Mike, and
not
I'm actually excited to do us
news,
do a
but I
bonus
didn't really know
episode
where else to
on
put it.
our first
You've seen
initial thoughts
stuff
of
on
the first
social
couple
media. I
episodes.
went to FanX, formerly known as Salt Lake Comic-Con, this past week. Had a good time. I've shared some pictures that I took there over the weekend, and hopefully by the time you're hearing this, I've shared a lot more on our Twitter and Instagram account. I just wanted to talk briefly about a few of the things that I did. I didn't get to do every Star Wars thing that I wanted to. For example, I had to actually, unfortunately, miss both panels that were behind the scenes in the original Cantina. But I did get to go to the panel that was celebrating the 40th anniversary of the holiday special, hosted by Pablo Hidalgo, Tom Spina, and I forget the guy's name offhand, but he runs the holidayspecial.com website. And it was super interesting. If you're
my
just hearing
goodness.
this now, go back to our Twitter feed and look at some of the pictures that I took at the panel. We just got to learn some neat stories from 40 years ago. Part of the reason the holiday special existed was these executives wanted to keep Star Wars fresh, because they said, George, when's the sequel coming out? Well, in 3 years. And they said, people will have forgotten about Star Wars by then, so we have to do something different. And there's a lot of cool stories about props. They actually, made permanent alterations to like Chewie costumes to make other Wookiees. No, to make his wife, actually. So, like, there
backup
were
Chewie
only
costumes.
2, and they permanently changed one of them, so they had to make more for Empire.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, I meant
so-
like the other, because there's never just one costume, right?
Yeah. Plenty about Itchy and B.
Yeah, of
Arthur and
course.
Harvey Korman, a bunch
That's
of other
amazing.
great stuff.
So
The-
Mala's his
uh,
wife's.
It is a little bit
stuff
lumpy, but
was just modified
seeing these high res
poorly.
pictures that these guys had, Itchy is horrifying, and I think I've posted
Lumpy,
one of
man.
those by
Lumpy.
now.
Don't forget Lumpy, the little creepy one.
Yeah, yeah. So honestly, this made me want to go back and watch the holiday special again. I've only ever made it through once in its entirety.
Lumpy is too, man.
Oh yeah, I remember the other thing I wanted to say. The
Same.
haircuts that
I did play it in the background
that
one
our
time at
heroes have.
a Christmas
Han
party that I played
has
in the
obviously
background.
much shorter hair. They think that Harrison was just coming in off of Force 10 from Navarone when they shot this, and there was a spirited debate on if Mark Hamill is actually wearing a wig, if he was coming off of Big Red 1. And the version I saw on YouTube was so low res I couldn't really tell, but seeing their
Wig.
actual photos,
I
like,
think he
oh my
is.
god, this is bad. So it was a super fun panel, and I also went to a panel hosted by 2/3
Sad
of the
photos.
Idiots Array podcast. They had a panel talking about Yoda. They took lots of audience questions. They've actually already posted it. They recorded that entire panel, and it's over on their podcast feed. So go check out the Idiots Array podcast. The two hosts that were there in person, Alan Zog and Ryder Waldron, they actually live here in Salt Lake City. So I was super excited to, I went up and talked to him after the show. It was pretty cool, but it was a super fun panel. Make sure you go check it out on their podcast feed.
All right.
So that was really it in terms of Star Wars panels I went to. Saw a bunch of great cosplay. The local area groups of the Rebel Legion, the 501st, the Mandalorian Mercs, and the Droid Builders were all like grouped together, which is pretty cool. Got some pictures with the youngling with the stormtrooper. That was fun. Oh yeah, a lot of really good Twi'lek costumes. Were probably my favorites, just because they actually, nailed. Oh well, they nailed the head tails. In addition to obviously the super intricate Mandalorian armor that
Looked accurate.
The Merc guys and just casual fans were doing was really good. Paul Rubens had to cancel a few days before, which means I did not get my Captain Rex action figure autographed, which really bums me out. But I did get a piece of art autographed by the Emperor himself, Ian McDiarmid. And I took this piece of art with plans for it, because this piece of art has been deemed too scary for the house. Check our Twitter feed after this episode is posted to see it. We're actually going to give this away, an autographed piece of art of the Emperor, signed by the Emperor himself.
Ian, yeah.
If you are interested in getting this pretty cool, but it is kind of scary looking, Emperor Palpatine art that's autographed.
I think it's beautiful.
It is scary though, man. But if you'd like this, we are just asking for your help with ratings and reviews. So if you want to be in the drawing to get this autographed art, write us a review. Doesn't even have to be a good one. Can be a bad one as long as it's funny or constructive. But send us a screenshot of that so we know kind of who wrote it and we can get in contact with you. Either send it to us on Twitter or through email at canoncantina@gmail.com. We're going to run this for 3 or 4 weeks to have plenty of time to get the word out there.
Right.
But towards the middle of October, we will pick a review. I kind of sprung this on Jesse, so we haven't even set if this is like a drawing or if there's criteria for it, but we will pick a written review and get in contact with that person and get you some really cool Emperor art. So I'm excited to do this.
Yeah, definitely.
So we'll have some more details on the specifics on how we're going to choose it in our next week's episode. But for now, just know
write us a review.
Yeah, just write us a review. We're going to have pictures of this thing up. So if you are interested, you know how to get it.
And that leads Mike into our next thing here, where I'm going to continue reading our actual written reviews on the show. So if you guys want to have a review written, if you want to have a review read, and just write us one and I'll read it on the show. And obviously, Mike, these people that have already written reviews are already in the contest for the Emperor Palpatine art.
Yeah, that's right. I should have said that at the beginning. If you've already written this review, thank you. You are already eligible to win this.
But what's great is all these people writing reviews are helping us reach our goal of getting 25 reviews so we can start releasing our film-specific commentaries,
That's right.
Starting with The Force Awakens as our first sort of goal. So you guys helping us reach that.
25 star ratings. We release the Force Awakens commentary. And if you write a review, you're entered to win the art.
It's a win for everybody. So let's go and read one of our earlier reviews here. This is a review titled "The Character Study the Star Wars Fandom Needs Right Now" by Wesley, Oklahoma.
That's a lot of pressure just based on the title.
Well, that's the pressure we need, Mike, to keep us focused. So let's go and read this review from Wesley here, who I might have possibly mentioned at the end of our Heir to Jedi episode. So it's funny, these back up to each other. This was unintentional. They backed up like this. That was more a letter of apology from our little tag. But let's read this. The Star Wars universe contains so much Luke Skywalker material that it's sometimes hard to keep up. It can even make the most dedicated Star Wars fan feel frustrated or lost. You shouldn't have to consume every piece of Star Wars content to really know the Luke you see on screen in the new trilogy. Mike and Jesse, the hosts of the Canon Cantina podcast, seem to understand this frustration. That's why these lifelong friends and Star Wars fans have put their extensive Star Wars knowledge to work in this podcast. They believe that there is still much more to be uncovered about the farm boy turned Jedi, and they're committed to examining every piece of Luke-oriented content on the road ahead to Episode 9. At a time when the Star Wars fandom is deeply divided, their quest to engage fans from all perspectives to uncover the true Luke of the new trilogy is ambitious and refreshing. And that's a great review.
That's entirely too much pressure. Thanks for that, Wesley. I'm going to start working twice as hard to live up to your expectations.
I just really like his last sentence because that's kind of the phrase I moniker on the show a lot, where he says that at a time when the Star Wars fandom is deeply divided,
in a world where the Star Wars fandom,
their quest to engage fans from all perspectives to uncover Luke is ambitious and refreshing. That actually is our mission statement here, Mike, is to engage all fans from all different walks, right? About our love of this character and to bring Star Wars back together, because we should not be divided right now at all. So I say, after we just talked about the Resistance trailer again, which is very upsetting, but you know, we try to stay as positive as we can on the show. And that's how I'm going to keep being with Star Wars as long as I can, you know? And so thank you for that review, Wesley. And if you guys want to have your review written on the show, read on the show,
there you go.
If you guys want to have your review read on the show, write us a review and give us that star rating, and it's going to help us get to that goal of ours. But let's go ahead and move on to the Dejaric table.
Think. You want to make that move. You want to make that move. You made that move, okay. I guess I'll have to destroy that little guy. Somehow I never get bored with winning. You can't wipe them off. They're holograms. Hey, Chewie, relax. Hey.
So we don't have just a whole lot to talk about here at the Dejaric table, but we did want to go ahead and plug.
It's all good news.
Yeah, it's all good news, but I don't know it's necessarily very deep. We've got the updated Star Wars Battlefront 2 roadmap with some stuff that's already happened here in September.
That's right, but we talked about the roadmap quite some time ago, Mike, and now we have a more clear-cut roadmap for Star Wars Battlefront. If you guys didn't catch us on that episode, the roadmap is essentially a timeline over the next couple months that EA DICE has laid out for the content that is coming out in Battlefront for the rest of the year. So right now, the month of September is well underway, and they have released new appearances for the clone troopers in the games. These are the 91st Mobile Recon Unit and the 104th Wolfpack clone troopers.
I'm sure the prequelists out there love that. Doesn't mean a whole lot to me, but
I love it. I don't think I'm going to be spending my in-game currency on this when Donald Glover Lando skins exist in the game.
That's right.
Especially 2 different Donald Glover Lando skins. But I'm a huge fan of the looks of the Clone Wars, and I think this is just showing that they're going to release more appearances of hopefully all trooper classes.
They look cool, but I know nothing of the details of which division they're with or whatever.
The Recon guys are the Kashyyyk ones.
Of course, you know that.
Well, the camo ones, right?
Something I'm looking forward to spending my in-game money on is we've got some heroes dropping in October.
Oh, yes. I'm saving my credits, actually, Mike, for this right now. As you know, Mike, but maybe not a lot of people on the show know, maybe the cat caught hints of this, but I'm a huge fan of General Grievous, and he's coming out in October, so less than a month away. And we're also getting different General Grievous appearances, which I'm not really sure what that's about. Maybe battle damage Grievous, maybe Grievous with the cape.
Grievous after Obi-Wan set all his organics on fire.
Yeah, Grievous just coughing over and over again. I'm assuming maybe Grievous with the cape, Grievous without the cape, things like that. But
2 arm and 4 arm, maybe. I don't know.
Who knows? And now they've showed that he's coming out for certain next month. Then November we have Obi-Wan and 2 appearances for him. Now this I am excited about, Mike, because there's not only my favorite character, but to play him, but different appearances of Obi-Wan could be really neat, right? They could do Revenge of the Sith Obi-Wan. They could do Attack of the Clones Obi-Wan. They could do Padawan Obi-Wan and Phantom Menace.
Please, God, only do Attack of the Clones Obi-Wan with that crap
space
haircut.
mullet. Yeah. I don't know. And obviously they could do the fan favorite, which is the middle ground between the Attack of the Clones and the Revenge of the Sith Obi-Wan, which is that Obi-Wan with the partial clone trooper armor, only protecting his shins and elbows for some reason, but still looks cool. It still looks cool. And he's got the battalion shoulder piece. Maybe they'll do that too. Who knows? But what's more important is after we get the hero of Obi-Wan, we're also getting new locations. We're getting Geonosis as they said the largest map that's ever been in Battlefront.
Yeah, the Galactic Assault mode, which is when I'm not playing Starfighter, is my favorite one. The objective-based kind of one that lets you play through all the big battles from the movie. So
on these huge landscapes. Cool. Yeah. And then we're getting more appearances, right, of clone troopers.
Yeah, and the vehicles to go with the Battle of Geonosis. Good point.
Yeah, so new vehicles. The STAP, if you remember that, Mike, the Bark Speeder and the AT-TE, which is what I've always dubbed the more turtley AT-AT, you know?
That's right.
And so then new vehicles.
On a less specific timeline, they just say in winter, we've got the only part I care about on this list, 2 more heroes, Count Dooku and Anakin Skywalker.
That sounds great to me. I will be cheering for Dooku. I will not be silent in that crowd. That's such an odd video. I can't believe that happened. I just cannot believe. Remember we talked about that on the show, how they announced all these heroes, lots of clapping, lots of people hooting and hollering and whatnot. And then Grievous as well got a big applause. And then they get to Dooku and it's nothing. I'm like, what? So, some new game modes are being added in the winter as well. A new game mode featuring capture points and capital ship takedown. So this is, I think, something that's going to be like the old game.
Yeah. Super, super fun. So I'm probably not being very responsive on social media or anything right now because our episodes come out Thursdays. This is Thursday, September 13th. And X-Wing Miniatures 2nd Edition came out today. So I have spent all of my money. I am updating all of my plastic shooty pew-pew spaceships. Hopefully I'm done reorganizing all the new stuff that came out with it. I'll have a more in-depth review of 2nd Edition once I've had a couple weeks to get some games under my belt, but super excited for it. I really want to get my hands on the Lando's Falcon model.
Yeah, I'm doing that
and
now as we speak.
And should anybody be in the California area, I'm actually going to be at the Minnock Open tournament that's put on by the Minnock Squadron podcast. That's in Burbank on November 3rd. If you have no idea who the Minnock Squadron is, they're the best and biggest Star Wars X-Wing miniatures game podcast. Those guys are great. Check out their podcast. They've got a website for all this stuff. MinockSquadron.com is how you can find out more about the tournament. Lots of cool prizes if you just kind of register and go. So if you're in the California area and thinking about giving X-Wing a try, this is a great community to jump in with here as the 2nd Edition rules reboot takes effect.
My only last question about X-Wing, Mike, is will Lando's Falcon be viable, strong?
I certainly hope so. I've been focusing my efforts around it, so I'll let you know more in a couple weeks.
Is it going to have, I'm assuming it's going to have all the pilots we see in the film.
The pilots for the ship are Han, Lando, L3, and then a generic pilot. The escape craft has its own ship model and pilots. It's got Lando, L3, I think a generic one, and then a drone that is loaded up with energy cells that detonates and damages enemy ships. That's
neat.
It's exciting. Yeah.
I could get behind fielding one list an X-Wing 2.0.
There you go.
Involved Lando.
And
This is Lando's Falcon.
The ship models for the Falcon and the escape craft actually like fit together. They dock together. So yeah, super excited for X-Wing Second Edition. Come check out the Minok Open, and we'll have more news on that as I get some more time to play it.
Sounds great.
So let's run over and talk to some strange computers.
Why don't we just go into light speed? We can't. How would you know the hyperdrive is deactivated? The city's central computer told you. R2-D2, you know better than to trust a strange computer.
All right, guys, it's poll time again, and that means we had a new poll this week that you guys participated in and had some interesting things to say. So let's talk about our poll this week.
Yeah, the poll was, which era of Star Wars movies is currently your favorite? Are you a Clone Wars loving prequelist? A diehard original trilogy fan? Are you captivated by the sequels? That's what I voted for. Or are anthology stories of Jyn Erso, Han, and Enfys Nest your jam? Tell us and we'll read comments on an episode. So this was a super surprising to me breakdown. I expected to see a lot more prequel lovers chime in.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe some of them didn't see this because they're definitely there on the internet. I'm not sure, Mike.
I think maybe the reason prequels only got 5% of the vote is I said Star Wars movies. The Clone Wars series does so much more to flesh out the prequel era, and there's a lot of good world building and stuff there. That could be their favorite time period, but maybe not necessarily favorite movies because the prequels are objectively worse movies than the others.
Oh, maybe so. I that's interesting way to look. Yeah, maybe they misinterpreted that because to me, Clone Wars is synonymous now with the prequel era.
And in my head when I wrote the question, that's what it was too. But
yeah,
going back and reading it again, if it's just the movies, the prequels are the worst movies. 43% for the original trilogy, not horribly surprising.
Kind of low, honestly.
Well, and
43%.
We'll see why in a second. There are other sequelists out there like me. We got 14% of the vote, but 38% voted for Rogue One and Solo, which I actually expected that to be the lowest one.
So you voted for the sequels, huh?
Yeah, I'm assuming you voted for original trilogy.
That's the curveball. I voted for anthologies.
Oh, wow.
So I'm very captivated by these stories that don't involve, people that have the Force or have the what people call what do they call it? The force fields around our heroes or whatever that's called.
Plot armor.
Plot armor. Yeah. I'm very infatuated with these period films. So yeah, I don't know. It's a tough question. You're right, Mike. Clearly my favorite films are the original trilogy.
Yeah,
but right now my favorite era to watch, I think, is those anthologies.
Yeah, and the question was just which is currently your favorite. That's free to change anytime. I actually went and saw Solo again last week in a dollar theater because I couldn't wait till the release of it, which actually, if you're listening today on the 13th, stay up a little late and the digital version will be available starting on the 14th with the physical release on the Blu-ray and DVD on September 25th. I still really liked Solo. I had a great time with it. It winks a little too hard at the audience sometimes with lines like, mining colonies are the worst, and a couple other things. But I still really liked it. And I'm excited to, get the home copy with all the special features and all that stuff.
Oh, I'm so thrilled to see that. So, but yeah, this is an interesting poll, Mike. We have a comment here from Rural Farm Boy is his name. Rural Farm Boy 1. He says, all right, fellas, it's kind of hard for me as I'm not much one to rank things, but just for my own self speaking, it seems to be which currently one I'm ever watching or into at the time. That's my favorite. So kind of like what I said, Mike. Clearly the OT's my end all be all films, but right now I'm really into the anthologies. So that's it for me. And I think that's what this guy's kind of saying.
Yeah, I think that we can later on down the road expand this question into a bonus episode for us. But yeah, some great surprising results there, and it led us into an off-air conversation that we wanted to go ahead and bring on air. So we don't think that Solo is going to get a sequel, even though Alden signed up for 3 movies. Just with the it may have broken even in the long run with the international sales. I don't actually know what the current figure is, but it
made more.
Yeah,
it still made a lot more.
It had the exorbitantly high budget because they had to reshoot so much of the movie and all the stuff that went on. We're probably not going to get a sequel to it, which is a bummer. But we were talking, and let's say the movie made a couple $100 million more, and we were going to get a sequel to it. What do we want to see in that movie?
Yeah, this is a great question, Mike. I think the list goes on and on and on. But the first thing we got to address here is clearly the movie points to them starting their relationship with Jabba. So if that was our starting point of the next story, where would that lead? So that's kind of where we start. If they go to Tatooine and meet Jabba and get signed up basically with his crew, his sort of way of doing things, what does that relationship look like, and what story points and plot points does that lead to?
Yeah, so starting from there, I'll kind of just describe what I would expect or hope or like to see in it, and if you've got something different, feel free to hop in. So they start working for Jabba. Lando is not in this movie, which is very hard for me to say, as much as I love the character. I think it fits better if he's got a little bit of time away from Han and Chewie after they just take his ship. And Han and Chewie end up working for Jabba's Hutt cartel that's having some beef with the Crimson Dawn. So they actually end up working against Kira in this sequel.
I like this. Yeah, and that would give Kira a reason to be back as well, which is, I think, good and needed. With the way they kind of establish her at the end as kind of a, not so much a villain, but a survivor in this world of crime, right? And she's kind of become a antagonist in a way.
Yeah.
So,
well, and we have to see how somehow she becomes Rey's mom.
That's right. She's got to be Rey's mom.
Yeah, so I think that would be neat. Put them in a different situation. Put Han and Kira in a different situation than they were in the first Solo movie. I almost said episode 1. In the first Solo movie.
Like, I would die if this movie had like new technology Jabba puppet and stuff.
Yeah.
And I would.
Yeah. Not CG, but full practical Jabba would be great. It'd also be fun to see Han and Chewie modifying the Falcon. They clearly never clean it because it has to go from the spotless, pristine white that Lando had to the
really dirty
dirt bucket that we see. But that would be fun. I don't know if it would fit the story really, but another thing I realized after watching the movie again last week is Enfys Nest is so cool, and if you could fit
more
Enfys
story
Nest and the Cloud Riders in there somehow, would be neat. Maybe this is young Han's introduction to some of the classic bounty hunters. Bosk was name dropped in Solo, so maybe he actually runs across Han and Chewie.
I was definitely thinking that.
We get a little side story with Chewie and Bosk having beef with the Wookiee Trandoshan fight.
Love that. Yeah, it'd actually pretty natural to bring in any of the bounty hunters. Maybe not all of them, that'd be excessive, but one or two, IG or Bosk or even Boba, one of the ones that we know. And I think that was probably their original plan, right, Mike, was to make this next film maybe Boba-centric, maybe not massive part of the movie.
One thing I remember hearing was that, and it's been long enough I can't even remember where I first heard this, but I liked the idea that if Boba was going to have his own movie, there would be a scene with Han and Boba Fett in the Solo sequel from Han's point of view, and then in the Boba Fett movie, the same scene, but shot from Boba Fett's point of view, which would be cool, but we're not getting either of those movies now, unless something happens in a couple years and they come to the streaming service where we're not going to get these movies.
I don't know. You never know, Mike. You never know. So
You never know, but I think that Disney they've put so many Disney Lucasfilm, they've put all these standalones on hold. They've got all their money with Ryan Johnson and his trilogy, and the Game of Thrones guys making their movies. I think that if we see stuff like this, it'll be on the streaming service if it really does take off, because Netflix and Amazon make their own big budget movies that have pretty big name stars in them. Maybe, hopefully down the road we get a Solo sequel somehow is basically all I'm saying.
And here's this really interesting, and I'm not saying I necessarily want this or this is going to happen, but they have their Han now for anything in the future they ever do.
And he had signed a contract for 3 movies, I think. So
right, but I'm just saying, like, even if they, a lot of people have been pushing for the semi weird idea, but this idea, I don't know if you've heard this, Mike. I'm sure you have. Just the idea of filling out some of the post Return of the Jedi content with recast actors.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's could actually be pretty interesting. Like some of these side stories, like something like Bakura, not for them to do Bakura, not for them to do Bakura, but something like that, where it's like, it's very clearly Han, Luke, and Leia, like not even 30 yet. I mean, like Luke and Leia, not even 30 yet. You know what I mean? And they could very well cast people as Luke and Leia now that they already have their Han. You know what I mean?
Sebastian Stan for Luke Skywalker.
And I mean, we got a new Chewie for the long haul. I mean,
yeah,
for like
that's true.
40 years or something, right? Jason could play Chewie as long as Peter did if he really needed to. You know what I mean? Or wanted to.
Jonas.
Up into
his name's not Jason, it's Jonas.
I know, I keep saying that. But
his name is Jonas.
Oh no.
That was bad. We should end on that.
But that's an idea as well, and I just think that's an interesting thing that could be in our future, and that could be as soon as 3 or 5 years out. That could be 10 years out. You know what I mean? I don't know.
And I like the idea, but it does go against what I've been saying. Is I want new, not these same characters again. So I don't know. I need plenty of new stuff before I go back for the continued adventures of Han, Luke, Leia, and Chewie.
If they're worried about this type of anthology stuff, that would do the best.
You're probably right. Yeah.
I mean, having a new younger actress play Leia would be tough at first, but I mean, it would be, if it was pulled off well, seeing Leia in her coolest time period, in my opinion, when she's scaled the rebellion and now she's one of the leaders of the New Republic all the way to The Force Awakens, right? Gaps. So I don't know. That's an interesting thing to me too, but I really want this second Solo film because a lot of this first Solo film was kind of origin story-esque, which it needed to be. And I feel like the second film could be like, all right, we got Han and Chewie, they're already together. We got Kira's relationship to them. Just go, And that would lead to some Boba stuff too, potentially, Mike, which would make them money, if anything. So,
well, you'd think having a Boba Fett movie would be guaranteed money, but they've put that on hold too. Anyway, so share what you would like to see in this hypothetical Solo sequel with us. You can tell us on Facebook. We have a page there. Find us on Twitter at the Canon Cantina. You can tweet at us, Instagram at Canon Cantina, or you can just send us the email at canoncantina@gmail.com. But let us know what your hopes for the Solo sequel are. And sure, we'll read some on the show if they're good.
Yeah, and tell us what you guys like about Solo and enjoy that digital and physical release. I'm going to dive into these special features, Mike, and I'm also excited to just watch Solo at home for the first time. It's be a fun experience. So
yeah, so you can find the Canon Cantina on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, Podbean, Podcast Addict, YouTube. We're over on Spotify. Basically, wherever you find podcasts, I think we're there. If we're not on the app that you like for some reason, let us know and I'll fix it.
Yeah, guys, and help spread the word of our show by subscribing, rating, and reviewing the show. That's the best thing to help us. And also, if you think we could do something better, send us an email at canoncantina@gmail.com. But most importantly, when you guys give us these ratings, it's going to help us reach that goal of getting 25 ratings or more so we can start releasing our film-centric commentary episodes, starting with The Force Awakens. And of course, if you guys write us an actual written review on top of that, That's going to put you in the contest for the Ian McDiarmid signed Palpatine art that is a little scary, but it's mainly beautiful. And we hope you guys can help us reach that goal. And one of you guys are going to win this cool stuff, which I think is great. But mainly these reviews, guys, help us show up in search feeds and help people find the podcast, which is helping the show grow. So every time you guys give us a new review or rating, we grow in our size, which is great.
We hope you had fun here in the Canon Cantina today as we went over the action-packed Vader Down comics event. Join us next week as we jump back to the Legends timeline and we go into one of the last books, I think, that was released in that, Luke Skywalker and the Shadows of Mindor.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this book, guys. It's going to pick up right after the Bakura timeline we left last time, and it's a strictly Luke-focused story. So if you guys want to read along at home, pick this book up. It's written by Matthew Stover, and he's actually one of the better received Legends authors out there. Almost every book he's ever written for Legends has been really widely received, and this is one of them.
We got burned a little bit last time. We had a Luke-centric story. Let's hope this goes a little bit better.
I hope so. No mention of noodles yet in my reading. So,
all right. Well, that's it for us today. Thanks for hanging out with us and talking about Star Wars and Luke Skywalker. Cheers, everybody.
May the Force be with you.
Boring conversation anyway.